Hello guys, what's up? Hope we're doing great. We're gonna talk about The Legend of Korra Season 3 with spoilers, okay? The stuff that I loved, the stuff that I liked, stuff that I may have issues with. Not really. Some stuff that I think could be improved upon. To start things off, really, I just love this season. I just love the whole experience of it. I love the premise of the story, the pacing of it, the stakes, the dramatic heft to it, and a lot of moments, and also a lot of the characters really popped off. And as you saw with the reactions, I really had a blast with this season. I rewatched this season actually to really make my full and just honest thoughts about the season overall, because I think rewatchability for me is a huge factor to really appreciate the craft and the storytelling that goes on the story and the characters, and really just like the overall narrative arc that goes from beginning to end. So let's start off with the amazing stuff that I loved about this season. The filmmaking. One of the most difficult things to achieve in shows is to really have that control of the pacing of the story, because it can draw out for just so long and it can be boring. Sometimes it can be rushed. We've seen several cases of that in many shows. And I think in this season, in 13 episodes, which I think could have used a little bit more episodes, but that's, you know, that's where Nickelodeon enters that picture. Really, that's not the fault of the writers or the directors or anything. But I really love the pacing of the story. It really took its time to set up certain things and then have their payoff by the end of the season. Present Zaheer and Ghazan and Minhua and Pili and just build the evil Avatar team. I thought that was thrilling to watch. And I also really loved how much they took the time to really rebuild the Earth Nation, to really integrate certain members, and how much conflict there was at the beginning. There were several like moral questions about it. I really loved how they addressed those certain issues in a way that it feels very grounded, really human. I love that they set up certain things that Zaheer talks about in the second half of the season, in which he talks about the incompetent leaders, the Earth Queen, Raiko, and really just showing Korra that she is not that much of an important figure anymore. Technicalities of the filmmaking were just top tier for me. The music, it really accompanied the dramatic heft of certain scenes, just like very kind of silent moments throughout. And also the visuals. Legend of Korra has been impressing me a lot with how much visual beauty is there to offer. And I think this season, there were certain scenes in which I swear that was just not TV show kind of shots. Those were images straight up of a movie, straight up of a film. I think that's incredible. And I think one episode that really stood out to me like that, it's episode 12. The episode 12 really felt like a full blown out movie to me. And also the action really stood out for me in episode 8 when they were capturing Korra. First half of the episode was all action and just pure tension. Sorry, I got a bug over here. And call me tragic or whatever, but I'm kind of a sucker for darker stories because it really provides some really emotional moments and overall very satisfying, really cathartic by the end of it. And I just love that about this season. It had such a darker tone to it, and the drama, just when it was building up to the finale, felt that ever since the Earth Queen was gone and Ba Sing Se was completely destroyed, and then the Air Temple and Tenzin and the Airbenders were falling apart, and then episode 12 happened, and then episode 13 happened. It really is very heavy. And by the end of it, the emotional weight about that last scene, which I'll talk about in the depth in just a few minutes, it really like sells on the dramatic tone of the season. I think the little character moments for me, they are very important, because not always is about the plot. It's not always about characters go from one place to another, you know, fighting and stuff. Those little character moments really make for some great character building. There were a ton of moments like that back in the Metal Clan, between Opal and Bolin, between Mako and Bolin, even between Bolin and Asami in episode 9. That game, that's honestly one of my favorite just quiet moments in the entire season. There is just so much subtext to that scene, because it really is like a reflection of how Zaheer and Korra confront certain situations, and it really feels like it's such a quiet moment, the calm before the storm, you know? And I think that's really necessary, because it really adds to the pacing of the episode. The side stories and the side characters in this season, my god, tell some really emotionally compelling stories about that. especially involving Lin and Sue. Episodes 5 and especially 6, with that whole psychological thing going on with Lin. At its core, it's a character study. It really is examining Lin's psyche and how she processes all those past events, how much of a mental toll is taken on her. And it's not only that we see the backstory of this character, it's just how we see it. It's just how we go through it. That's my favorite part. We're not only seeing it, we are living it. We are living it through Lin's skin, through Lin's emotions. And I think that sets up a beautiful payoff, really dramatic moments as well. It makes up for some great storytelling. Also, another side story that I think it's quite underrated, and I really love this episode, is episode 7, The Original Airbenders. It's not only, I think, one of the funniest episodes of Korra, may be the funniest, but it's also like a beautiful tale about really just the airbenders trying to work together. And I think that makes up as well a beautiful setup for how they're gonna work together in episode 13. It really is very all well thought out. And that's the thing, we have episodes like that don't necessarily advance the plot, but it's building characters, and I think that's really necessary in the show. That's really compelling to watch for me, because I'm just spending quality time with the characters, with Kai and Jinora, with Bumi and Tenzin, as long as there is a focus on the characters. That's very important, and I think they nailed that. And also side characters that really improved for me, especially from the last season, Mako and Asami. I liked Mako in season 2, especially because he had this kind of like a character arc in season 2, really accepting that things with Korra were not gonna work anymore. He starts that detective role. And here, that detective role, he shines in that. Finally, I think the writers and the creative team really found like something to do with Mako. Before, he was just a love interest. If you really just paint a character as a love interest, it can be boring. It can really grow old very fast. But in this one, in this season, he is not only a detective, and he's really good at it, but he also has a very special little role as the big brother. And I really love that, especially in episode 3. We had that little moment with Grandma and let it go of that scarf. It was really symbolic to him, and it seemed like a very mature choice of Mako to do something like that, because that scarf is the one attachment that he has to his father. And I think for some reason, that really clicked with me, and it made me tear up a bit. You can see that in the reaction. And even a rewatch, it clicked with me and just it stayed with me. It's one of my favorite emotional moments in this season. And I also love that he has so much more time to spend with Bolin. Episode 3 especially, and some jokes over here and there in episode 5, in episode 4 even fighting, in episode 13. There were so many good moments with Bolin and Mako together that it really felt like that's the brother relationship that I've always wanted. And I only had that like a few moments here and there in season 1, and by the end of season 2. But here, it just really clicked with me as well. Also, Asami. It was so clear that they just had to do something with Asami. And I love how they are writing her character here. I have a theory about Asami though. I'll talk about that just a little bit later. She was just a love interest before. Now, she is essentially Korra's best friend. Korra's best companion. And that's throughout the whole season. Korra's closest friend is Asami. I love that. I know that maybe that could be like abrupt going from season 1 and 2 to season 3, because there was no really that much of a friendship between Asami and Korra, but I think it makes sense now for them to spend time together now that that whole love interest, love triangle thing is gone. There is no relationship between Mako and Asami, there's no relationship between Mako and Korra, so there shouldn't be any tension, and they make fun of that. I love that. It was kind of ridiculous. I really enjoyed that whole love triangle thing. I really did, because it really, you know, these are teenagers going through some, you know, emotional turmoil and emotional confusion. So I really relate to that. But I really appreciate that they make fun of it in this season, so it can just provide new and fresh stories and character relationships. And I love that they make jokes, and I love that they fight together, and they just really spend a lot of time together working as a team. And as for the theory, for me, while I was rewatching the season, while I was editing the final episode of this season, the reaction to this season, and Asami was touching her hand, and they really focused on that. Like, they really lingered on that image for like 4 or 5 seconds. Very intimate to me. I'm having the theory, the idea, the sensation that Asami somehow likes Korra, and she doesn't know it yet. Somehow. For some reason on a rewatch of this season, I get the sensation that Asami is sort of attracted to Korra. She really cares for her, like in a deep way. She doesn't know that exactly yet. So yeah, that's my theory. I would be surprised if they go that way. I mean, I think it's just hinted at. I would be really surprised if Nickelodeon let that happen, because this is, I think, in 2013, 2014, and I don't know if they would be allowed, like the credit team, to like hinting at the possibility of an LGBT relationship, of a gay relationship. I doubt that. I highly doubt that. If they do, wow. But yeah, I think it's very interesting the way Asami and Korra interact with each other in certain scenes of this season. I just found that really funny. It was just interesting to see how in this season there was a lot of focus on the side stories and the side characters, and this is just maybe a sensation. I had the sensation that Korra didn't have much of a presence or screen time in this season. I think it may be intentional. Korra is not as important anymore in this world, and just so many other storylines and character interactions, they take the spotlight. And so Korra is removed from that spotlight, because that's what Zaheer is trying to do. That's what the story is trying to do, to remove her out of that, to really have that message come across about the idea of change. And I think that is really totally solid. The humor, I think the humor most of the time really worked. There were some bold-in jokes that didn't click with me, especially one by the end of the season, which I'll talk about. But I think the humor, I think this might be the funniest season of Korra yet. Episode 2 and episode 7 really worked for me. The whole street performance, and really the entirety of episode 7, was just hilarious to me. It was true to the characters themselves as well. Also, the thematic tie-ins. And by this, I mean that really the whole season is about change in a way that is destructive, that is positive, that is depressing. There's a lot of visuals about that. Ba Sing Se destroyed, Mako given the scarf away, the air temple destroyed, the air nation reborn, the avatar figure thus not being important anymore. There's a ton of that in the season. So much changes in this season that I think makes up for some beautiful setup for the next one. Zaheer. I think Zaheer was a solid villain. He was very threatening. I love how strategic he was. I love how he presented his ideas, even though sometimes it was just a little bit too expositional for me. I'll get into that a little bit later. But I really love how a villain truly believes in his ideals, as incoherent as they can be. But that's not the point. He believes in these ideals so much, so freaking much, that he does stuff like that bring consequences, I think, for the next story, the next season. Bringing down Ba Sing Se, bringing down the Earth Queen, bringing down the Air Temple, and really bringing down Korra to her absolute lowest. Yes, Zaheer may have been defeated, but did he really lose? Because Korra was later in a wheelchair. And that just means that her physical strength and her mental strength as well is completely taken away from her. She's not really the avatar anymore. Zaheer, what he did from a structural level and from a character perspective as well, he really does stuff that's gonna affect forever the world of Korra. Now, is he my favorite villain of Korra? No. Actually, no. He's a very good villain. I really like him. For me, it's still Amon. One reason for that. If this villain was given a backstory that I think was missing here, backstory missing here between Pali and Zaheer, and I'll just get into that in just a minute. Amon had the skeletons in the closet episode, which I think right now actually might be my favorite episode from that season, from season 1 of Korra. I've really come to appreciate that episode so much, because Amon, when you're watching him for the first time, you really do believe that he is fighting for an ideal. But really, it's just a whole big lie that he tells himself. He, deep down, a traumatized kid, and just emotionally cold and destroyed, because everything that was so human or out of him was completely taken away because of this huge conflict with his father and how his father abused him and his brother. And that, for me, creates a new character layer for that villain, because he was not only trying to be really the anti-figure of the Avatar, but this was all really coming from a very personal and emotional place. And it's those final moments that really sell it to me. Moments before he dies and he sheds that tear. It's one of my favorite moments throughout the whole show, and it really gave me just a fresh perspective on Amon and a rewatch. Like, I don't see that tremendously relentless figure of authority and just scary for Korra. No, it's also this traumatized kid that's a victim. So from that villain, it showed me not only an intellectual side, but also a very emotional side. Zaheer, I think if we were given, here's the thing, because this season could have benefited a lot more with more screen time for the villains, and I'll get into that with the second half of this video. The relationship between Polly and Zaheer, I think it was just so important to explore a lot more, because we were just given the moment of their relationship in episode 4 when they kissed, but then by the end of the season we were given this scene, this beautiful scene for me, between Polly and Zaheer, and how Polly really is like letting Zaheer know how much he has impacted on her in a positive way because of the way he thinks, and how much that has saved her. And seeing Zaheer, how Zaheer reacts to that, really makes me think like they really care for each other. And Zaheer's ideals not only affect from an intellectual way, from a structural way that is tearing apart a city, but it's making so much of an emotional impact for a character that he seems to really care about. And that's the thing. I think if that was a little bit more explored, I think I would have felt just a lot more for Zaheer when Polly is gone. Role of Korra. She has so much frustration to go through in this season. So unappreciated by President Raiko, unappreciated by the Earth Queen, prosecuted by so many people. Puts her from a very human ground, from a very human perspective. And to see her like continuously like fighting for like the rebuilding of the Air Nation, and then redirecting her purpose to defeat Zaheer, making those choices of kind of sacrificing herself and be the one thing that Zaheer was telling her she was not going to be that much of an appreciated figure anymore. It's really heartbreaking. The final 3 episodes were just like a movie, and I've said this repeatedly throughout the reactions and in the rewatch. The music, the visuals, everything about it was just so intense. Like those last 3 episodes, it could be its own little movie. I would watch so much more about that. Like honestly, watching those 3 episodes back to back, you have to watch it back to back. That's what I did. I watched it back to back because it's the only way. Venom of the Red Lotus. It's just such a beautiful finale. Really is some of the best episodes of Korra. There's just a couple things that on a rewatch were like, okay, it kind of distracts me. Sometimes it feels a little bit too familiar. And here's the thing. One aspect that I've come to really appreciate from The Legend of Korra tried to be its own thing, to find its own voice. It's not trying to be Avatar: The Last Airbender. I did not feel that in season 1 or season 2 of Korra. I did get that kind of a feeling in this season in certain aspects. It's not only the fight between Korra and Zaheer, which is for me clearly a poetic callback to that fight between Aang versus Ozai, but it's also like the scenery of the cave in which Mako and Minhua and Bolin and Gazan fight. It's all very green with these green crystals that really reminding me of that finale of book 2 of Avatar: The Last Airbender. And then a rewatch, I'm thinking it's kind of a bit distracting to me. Couldn't have been another kind of scenery for that, because it was oddly familiar to me. But other than that, really loved how much of a payoff it was. You know, seeing just Mako defeating Minhua on a rematch, Bolin versus Gazan. Although I would have loved to see more of Gazan and Minhua. The Airbenders working together, Jinora leading them, which is amazing. That's a setup from episode 7, and bringing Zaheer down, which is it's so poetic. That goes for all the villains. Polly is exploded, and what she did was, you know, explosions. Minhua is electrified through water. Gazan just shattered through, you know, blocks of earth. All very ironic. It's all very poetic. I love it. And seeing Zaheer being beaten by air is just really funny and great. My favorite scene of the entire season, it's the last couple minutes. Seeing Jinora being like now transformed into this master airbender, the youngest one in so many years, and at the same time we have Korra in a wheelchair. Korra, the Avatar, in a wheelchair. The perfect bittersweet ending for me. It is a sense of victory and loss at the same time. It really is a victory for Zaheer, because what Zaheer wanted was to Korra to be not that relevant anymore. And that's just super sad, because it really makes this beautiful and heartbreaking tie-in with seasons 1 and 2, in which basically Korra's biggest fear is to lose herself. And throughout this whole journey, she has been trying to find herself, to find her own voice. We've seen that in season 1 with trying to master airbending, and then like she loves to be the avatar, and then when she loses those abilities and they're weakened, it completely leads her to the point of the S word. It's just freaking dark. And season 2, which I think is, for me, my favorite Korra character development journey so far. I haven't seen season 4 yet, in which so much of Korra's fears is to live up to the legacy of the Avatar. And when she has those lives killed off in front of her, those past lives killed in front of her, it's just heartbreaking, because she feels like she's not worthy anymore. She feels like, how can she be the Avatar then? In that moment, she has to learn to be her own Avatar, her own thing. She has to be Korra. Again, losing that identity, but this time in the most heartbreaking way, in a way that Tenzin is telling her, hey, chill, as the Air Nation, we're gonna rebuild this, we're taking care of this, you just chill, recover, we got this, you can rest, you did your job. You did your job. Are you kidding me? Korra loves to be the Avatar. Korra loves to use that physical strength that is taken away, completely away from her. That was why I was so blown away by the end of the finale. First time watching and really rewatching as well. It really hit me. I just couldn't make an episode discussion in the first time watching reaction, because I was really processing all of that bittersweetness and sadness for Korra. It was so sad. Now, there is stuff that I think could have been better. I'm not saying these are exactly flaws. Maybe these are things that are just like personal preference. Some of these things just kind of distract me in the overall enjoyment of the story, especially on a rewatch. Not really in a first time watching experience, because I really did have no problem with it when I was reacting to this for the first time. But on a rewatch, considering like the whole story structure and how much there is an opportunity for improvement, actually, which I think it's a great season, it's a great story, don't get me wrong, I think could have been better, and I think these are the reasons why. First of all, Zuko. Yes, that's right. Lord Zuko. I love Zuko. Zuko is one of my favorite characters, not only of Avatarverse, but also of all time. He means so much to me, and he's such a well-written character. But really, on a rewatch, looking at Zuko's role in this story, I'm thinking, if you take out Zuko out of this story, and his dragon as well, which I think they give great moments, don't get me wrong, I'll get into that. If you take them out of the story, does it really affect the storyline and the overall plot and narrative of this whole season? I don't think so. I think if you take him out and you insert certain things that I think really could have been necessary, I think the story could have benefited more. For example, I think if you take out Zuko and you just include a little bit more of Red Lotus backstory, I think the season could have been a lot better. And that's the thing, Zuko for me in this season comes across as mostly fan service and just that. And yes, he gave us this beautiful moment with Korra in episode 11, in which he was giving Korra a piece of advice, and he was having this beautiful reaction of how like Uncle Iroh was mentioned in that conversation, and how like he's in the spirit world, and also showing his dragon, and also fighting Zaheer and the rest along with his dragon. You bring a character, the gravity of him, of, you know, such force, to have those little moments. I would like to think that they are building him for a greater purpose in season 4. If they don't, I would still feel very strongly about this, because here's the thing, if you're gonna set up a dragon, use that dragon, not only for a 5-minute fight in episode 4. And that's the thing with fan service for me. It can be good, it can be satisfying, especially in a first time watching experience, but in a rewatching experience, that fan service has to hold up as a key narrative device, as something that it really is contributing to the storytelling of a narrative. And to explain myself better with this one, I have to talk just a little bit about one movie that was just released recently that I think did fan service mostly well, and it's Spider-Man No Way Home. Spoilers in just a few seconds, okay? You've just been warned, okay? Okay, when Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield appeared in Spider-Man No Way Home, of course I was cheering for that. Of course I was having like these fanboy moments. But not only were there for just fan service, they were there to serve a purpose to the story and to the character, to the main character. It was there to establish a brother dynamic, an emotional connection with the main character, and to let that main character know about the qualities, about the losses, about their experiences, about so many human things that have happened to these three versions of Peter Parkers, that it really justifies bringing them to the story. That is, for me, good storytelling. That is good fan service. Zuko, in this one, he doesn't really provide much of a meaningful, emotional connection or establishment of a character relationship with any character, really. We have these little fan service moments in which he fights, and he fights with the dragon, and he has that conversation with Korra, which Uncle Ira was mentioned in the conversation. But it's just that. If you replace him with another character, it really doesn't make much of a difference. On a rewatch, when I'm seeing like his reveal in episode 2, I'm like, it's cool, but the effect is gone. I'm not surprised, of course, but I'm like not excited to see him because he doesn't do anything in this season, really. So that's just sort of disappointing for me. The Red Lotus backstory. I'm pretty sure that a lot of you have that issue with this season, and I think that's mostly because of how Nickelodeon treated this show, and so few episodes were given. But I think this could have really benefited the season, honestly. Now here's the thing: if season 1 had that skeletons in the closet episode, and that season was 12 episodes long, and this is 13 episodes long, pretty sure that there could have been a better way to introduce that Red Lotus backstory, show to us, not told to us, because we are told about it. And that's another thing that's sort of an issue for me. They use telling, not showing. For example, when they tell Korra about how Sokka and Zuko and they were protecting Korra from Zaheer and others, they were just telling. When Pali and Zaheer had that conversation about how much Pali and Zaheer have connected and how much Pali was impacted by Zaheer, which is great. I think it's a great conversation. It's a great moment, but I think it would have been much more impactful. It would have added more to the story of this season to have those moments shown to us, to have that backstory shown to us. It adds to the story. It adds layers to the character development. I think that's why I freaking love episode 6 of this season. We're not told about Lynn's backstory, we're shown. And we're not only shown Lynn's backstory, we're shown through an emotional place, like through Lynn's head. We are living those moments through Lynn. That is good storytelling. That is not only good story, that is great storytelling. That Red Lotus backstory was a kind of a missed opportunity, I think. Yeah, when we have those conversations between Minhua and Gazan and Bolin and Marco in that truck in episode 10, and especially on a rewatch, I'm like, dude, I wish I was shown that, of like those moments before and just them interacting before. For example, I think episode 10 I really like the whole Asami and Korra adventure. I mean, you remove that and you introduce the Red Lotus backstory, some of the Red Lotus backstory. It could have been better. It could have been better. Maybe like make episode 10, for example, a Red Lotus full-on episode. That would have been freaking amazing, because really the highlight of that episode is Zaheer taking down Boss and Say. Why not showing us more about the Red Lotus? Like, have us a villain episode. That would have been amazing. Now, what's coming? I think this is a personal preference. I've had conversations about this in the comments, past few videos, and it's about Tenzin's outcome. Here's the thing. When episode 11 happened, like the end of episode 11, I really thought he was going to be another casualty. When you have a camera panning away like that, like not showing us the sheer violence that Tenzin is going through, I'm thinking, okay, Nickelodeon cannot show death, on-screen death, except for the Earthquake. It really is making me think, when that camera movement happens, it really is making me think that they're killing him off. In the next episode, when we are shown as like, no, he's just like thrown away there in the floor, I'm thinking, okay, so that was shock value. It's good shock value, but Tenzin's damage doesn't have much of a consequence. So when he's celebrating Jinora as the Master Airbender, and he has no damage at all, it kind of throws me off just a bit, because we were going through one of the most emotionally heavy moments of Legend of Korra, which was seeing Tenzin beaten the frick down, and then seeing him like nothing in the very finale. It's kind of weird to me. That's just, I think, personal preference. What I would have done, maybe not kill him. Maybe that would have been too tragic. And maybe Zaheer wouldn't have killed him, because I think, and this has been because of conversations that I had in the comments with you guys, that really he's not a leader. And that makes sense because they're air nomads and they really just go their own way. And I think really that makes sense. Why not making him not traumatized necessarily? I think that's going to be Korra's story. But maybe him, this Tenzin, just physically like really torn apart, really damaged in a way that he is struggling maybe to airbend again or to properly move like an airbender. Maybe something like that, because we were shown in episode 11, for example, that he is a freaking airbending master. He really has his moves and he is a pro. There is no one to match him, not even Zaheer. Maybe what I would have done is that by the end of the season, have him just physically very damaged. Not in a gruesome way, in a way that we know already that he is going to have some time trying to recover physically to airbend properly again. Maybe that. Maybe I'm too tragic. Maybe I am too dark. Yes, okay. But maybe that. Because when I'm watching that scene, I'm amazed by how dramatic it is. The filmmaking is amazing. Like, it's just such a great scene. What was most heartbreaking to me on a rewatch was seeing the air temple destroyed. That really it's just like, we have spent so much time there that it's just like, man, that's just gone. And certain details. By this, I mean like character decisions or like writing choices that was kind of weird to me. 3, I think in particular. In episode 8, we are revealed that Aiwei is a traitor. But the thing is that I don't think Aiwei's plan is really all that intelligent. Aiwei is just trying to make look that this random guard is the traitor. What was his plan? Really? Like, did he really think that was going to work? He's treating Mako and Korra and Bolin and Asami like idiots, basically. They're not. They can easily find out Aiwei is a traitor. That was just slightly weird to me that they went through that writing choice. In episode 12, there was a moment in which it was actually mentioned in the comments. There's this farewell between, you know, Korra and Asami and Mako and Bolin. And there's this moment in which Korra hugs Mako and the music swells. That was weird. That was honestly weird, because throughout this whole season, one of the main character dynamics is Korra and Asami. They spend a lot of time together. Mako spends a lot of time together with Bolin, not with Korra. It was a little bit weird to see that hug with so much emotional weight, because I think this could have fit a lot better in a season like the second one or the first one, in which there is time spent together between these two characters. Not in this one. I think if you replace Mako with Asami and the music swells, I think that's much more impactful. I think that's much more coherent with the story, but it's also much more emotionally powerful because we are attached to them being friends throughout this whole season. And episode 13, the joke, the sock joke. I've read in the comments that some of you don't like this. When I first time watched this, and you saw in the reaction, I didn't mind it. I thought it was fine. Then on a rewatch, I'm like, that's the final frame of Zaheer with a sock. It feels like the story is mocking him, humiliating him. I thought that was a weird way to end his character in this season. I bet he's gonna appear in season 4. This was such a beloved character back in the day that I'm sure they're gonna bring him back in season 4. But just seeing him defeated with a sock on his mouth, a weird way to end things with Zaheer in this season. But to really end this on a positive note is what takes afterwards that really sells the season for me. Korra in the wheelchair and Asami trying to, you know, like make Korra feel well. And those final moments in which Jinora is the master bender, but at the same time it's Korra just defeated, utterly, psychologically, mentally, physically defeated. When I saw that, I was like, yo, I'm mind blown, I'm emotionally exhausted. I cannot wait to see the character journey for Korra. It just think about so many things, so many situations that could happen in season 4, and that really is my favorite scene. That really is my favorite frame even that last shot of Korra shedding that tear, it made me realize how much I care about Korra. One of my favorite characters in the entire Avatar verse as of right now, and I cannot really wait to see her journey in season 4. I am so excited. If I had to, you know, rank this season, it really is very difficult for me. I think I need to complete The Legend of Korra first to make my mind about that, because I think for me, seasons 1, 2, and 3, they are so solid that they are kind of equal to me. I said in season 2 spoiler discussion that I think season 1 is better than season 2, but somehow I prefer season 2 over season 1. Now seeing things in season 3 and having like rewatched certain episodes from season 1 and season 2, for me it really is very unsure for me to rank, honestly. I think there are things in season 3 that are better than season 1 and 2, and vice versa. I think there were things in season 2 that are better in season 1 and 3, and for same for season 1. A little bit, you know, like very tied to me, and I think they're all excellent pieces of storytelling. Very unique, very different, even though there was a lot of like production problems with this whole show. I think that thematically and the whole character journey, especially of Korra, I think they are very well connected. Thread, that character journey being consistent all the way through, and I cannot wait for season 4 to end in that journey. It is bittersweet for me to say because I'm loving Legend of Korra. So far, I'm loving every season. Cannot wait for season 4. It's going to be, I think, a very exciting journey. I'm so worried. I've been told it's amazing, and I just cannot wait for that. So yeah, that will be it. Please let me know down in the comments, what do you think about the season? Is it your favorite? Did you find any things that you really love about this season? Which are the ones that really stay with you? Maybe things that didn't click with you. Maybe things that you thought that maybe could have been even better. Please let me know down below. Thank you so much for watching. Really hope you enjoyed this video. If you want more content like this, please give it a like, and you may want to subscribe if you haven't yet. I also do first time watching movies, rewatching movies, other TV show reactions, and much more. And we'll see each other in the next one. See ya!